Hello and welcome to this episode where I'm going to give you 5 rules for design that you really shouldn't be breaking. Okay, we're here in InDesign and I want to take you through some of these items. Number one of my pet peeves is people using hyphens where they should be using M-dashes. Now they're different. They're very different, and it depends on the font as to how different they are. Some fonts, like Garamond, have a really big, wide M-dash, whereas this one in this font, Source Serif Pro, is actually not so wide. So what is an M-dash? Well, it's an M-E-M dash, and it looks like that. In theory, it's roughly the width of an M character, but you can also do an N dash, which is the width of an N. And then there's a hyphen, which is really an L dash. Looks like that, the width of an L. Now, what are they used for? Well, let's break these out into a few separate things. M dash, N dash, and L dash. So the M dash is for breaking out a clause in a sentence so that it becomes something a little bit different, like that. And there's different usage styles for M dashes in different countries. Generally in America, you would skip the spaces or use very thin spaces like sixth space or a thin space, something like that. But in Australian use, it's much more common just to put a full space either side. That's possibly why hyphens are maybe more accepted here, but it's really not good practice at all, and you should absolutely be using M dashes instead. So how do you type an M dash? If you're on a Mac, it is Option Shift hyphen for an M dash, and for an N dash, it's Option hyphen. Obviously, an L dash is just a hyphen. There we go. So what's an N dash for? It's for ranges. So two numbers or two dates, you put an N dash between them, like that. Anyway, that's those. That's the dashes. So quotes. Now, if you put regular quotes just using the quote key, you will get quotes that are usually the right way, but they're not the right way if they're after a space and you want it to actually be an apostrophe. It's not an apostrophe. An apostrophe looks like that. It's facing the other way. So how do you type that? Option, Shift, right, square bracket, like that. That's how you get an apostrophe. And there is a difference, and the bigger you make it, the more obvious it looks. And in some fonts, it looks way, way, way worse than others, but it's always wrong. Okay, you'll see here there are 2 spaces after a full stop or period if you're in America. That's wrong. 1 space after a full stop. You had 2 spaces on a typewriter, and we're not using typewriters anymore. 1 space, the correct amount of space is built in, or it should be, into the font. You don't need to hit return twice in a row to separate paragraphs, and in fact you shouldn't. Even Word discourages you from doing this these days. So only return, that is enter on the main keyboard, only do that once between paragraphs. I can go to the paragraph options here in InDesign and put maybe 1 millimeter before and 1 millimeter after, and I just get that little bit of spacing between paragraphs. Now you can use more or less than that, but you should never hit return twice. It'll ruin your designs, it'll stuff things up. Only hit return once. And lastly, my big 5 mega tips is use styles. So I could say all of this is body text. I'm going to quickly option click the new button there. I'm going to call this one body, and it's going to remember everything that I want body to be. So I'm going to knock the font size down, maybe to 11 point. I'm going to change the lettering so it's more spaced out between lines, not the paragraph spacing that's between lines. So 11 on 15, and I can access everything else here. I can do spacing before and after. I can keep the paragraph together so I can avoid widow and orphan lines, and you can do all kinds of things with styles. I say okay, I make sure I apply that, and now I've got a really good baseline. I could, if I wanted to, introduce more styles. So I could introduce yet another one, which I call maybe heading 1, and I could change the style. Let's change that completely to something else. Let's go Orcs next. Make it ultra italic. I'll make it much bigger. I'll set that back to auto and I'll say OK. I'll make sure I'm actually using that style. There we go. And what this means is that as I'm typing, I don't need to go through and redefine all that stuff. I just say heading 1 and it's done. And when I want to change my mind later and say, you know what, all those headings should be red, I just right click and edit, and then I pick a different color and they all change and I can see them change. I can right click body and decide that, well, you know what, that font's a bit ugly, let's go to the Source Sans Pro version of that instead. And it all changes there and another 50 pages if this is a big document. It's a massive time saver. It lets you be consistent, and it's just something you really, really should learn more about. Now, there's a lot more to design than just these basic tips here, and I have a course with 10 essential design tips, which you might find useful. Still, I hope those tips helped you, and I'll see you on the next video.